This isn't a gentle, easy, friendly, light a candle type of magic. It's a bit of dark sorcery, to be honest. Hello, this is Agatha Dunlap, and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I want to talk about thought forms. There's servitors, maybe a little bit, tulpas, familiars, but mostly thought forms, because they're the simplest of the techniques, the magical techniques. I'm going to talk about what is a thought form, what magical systems use thought forms, a little bit about some of the history regarding thought forms, and I'm going to talk about the kinds of magic that people do when they create a thought form. I'm also going to give a brief overview of a few methods for creating thought forms. First off, what is a thought form? The thought form is a creation created by the magician, made with a concentrated thought that has the purpose to complete a task for the magician. Let's work on an example of a thought form. You have this thought: I will be relaxed during an interview. And you want to remember this thought, so you create a thought form. That you're the magician and you create this thought form. You follow a series of specific steps that you use to make this thought form alive, in a sense. And once this thought form is created, it's alive, it's ready to do its work. So it's not just you remembering, I will be calm during my interview. There's this outside entity that you've created, this spiritual thought form that's going to remind you to be calm during your interview and help you make this a visual thought. You can make it look like something, like a shining blue pulsing ball of energy. And you can say in advance that when you go into the room during the interview, that you will visualize your thought form, this shining pulsing blue ball of energy coming over maybe the head of the guy you're interviewing with, or the woman, and then it's calming blue light just fills up the room and fills you up, and everybody gets relaxed and calm, and you let go of your nerves during the interview because your thought form is there calming you, and you can't help but be relaxed and calm during your interview. And all you need to do to activate it is to think of your thought form and see it in your mind's eye, or perhaps even actually see it, depending on how good you are at visualizing. And it's going to do its job. And there you are. You created a thought form, and now you're having your interview, and lo and behold, you're calm and relaxed. Magic accomplished. So that's an idea of a thought form. Let's stop for a moment and talk about this. The history of thought forms is that most people link it to the chaos magic systems, but chaos magic is a relatively recent form of magic, and this type of magic has been used in the past. In fact, let me read this passage from Donald Tyson's Serpent of Wisdom. And now here we're talking about familiars, which are not exactly the same as a thought form, but there are some similarities. And let me just read this. Familiars are seldom evil spirits held against their will. But the notion that familiars are evil arose from the anti-magic propaganda of the church during the witch craze of the 16th and 17th century. Any priest viewed any relationship that a human had with a spirit or a thought form or a familiar of any kind was inherently evil and consequently devilish, and women accused of witchcraft were coerced into confessing many untruths, and, well, basically we all know what happened to those millions of people who were accused of being witches. This isn't a gentle, easy, friendly, light a candle type of magic. It's a bit of dark sorcery, to be honest. But thought forms are sort of an entry level into that world, which moves from thought forms to servitors to egregores and so on. So let's see. What else can I say about thought forms? Magic involving egregores. What is an egregore? Let's stop and talk about that. An egregore is a thought form or a servitor that gets out of hand. It has a mind of its own, sort of the AI nightmare of magicians. And this sort of a situation is definitely predates the chaos magic time period. The most famous example of this is the golem. And the golem is basically a servitor thought form created from a clay edifice, or effigy, and one of the most famous golem stories is that of a Jewish rabbi mystic who lived at the end of the 16th century in Prague, and it was during the part of the Holy Roman Empire, and the leader of that area, Rudolph II, was an enlightened emperor, but he was unable to stop the anti-Semitic attacks that were happening to the Jewish people in that area of Prague by Christians who were incited by Jewish-hating priests. So not all Christians, but some Christians were incited to be anti-Semitic by their Jewish-hating Christian priests. And so this one rabbi created a golem by fashioning a man of clay, and he prayed over it. He wanted it to protect his people. According to the legends, he wrote the secret name of God on the clay form's forehead, prayed over it, and asked the golem to protect them against these attacks. And the golem there allegedly then grew large and powerful and was able to physically hold off the attackers like a protective servitor that ran around this area and stopped attackers from being able to harm the people. But later, as with Frankenstein, the golem became too large and powerful and destructive and no longer was under the control of the rabbi, and started wreaking havoc, killing people indiscriminately by just walking through their houses or whatever. So there are stories of thought forms or servitors or magically created other people / entities getting out of hand and becoming a problem. Now, let's go back to a common form of this sort of magic, which is done naturally by some children, where they create an imaginary friend. And some children will have an imaginary friend that in their minds is so real that they can summon this imaginary friend to be with them. At any point, they picture this friend, they hear it speak to them. It can be an animal, a teddy bear, a person, but it's all created by the child in the child's mind, and it becomes real in a sense. And that child, when it summons this imaginary friend, it can ask the friend to perhaps sit there across from them and play with the child, and to maybe to listen to the child's thoughts and feelings, or comfort the child who might be lonely or frightened or in some sort of troubled home or difficult place, where this friend helps them escape into the dream world of their secret friendship. And then this child who made up this friend and paid attention to it and then asked it to do something for himself, like sit there and play with him, has essentially done a thought form or created a type of magic. And now, according to Adam Blackthorne, who is the author of Chaos Magic, the Master Works of Chaos Magic, Practical Techniques for Directing Your Reality, all you need to create a thought form is make something up, pay attention to it, and then ask it to do what you want. You know, just like the child did. I made up an imaginary friend, I paid attention to it, and then I asked it to play with me and comfort me and make me feel better. So, as there are many different methods for doing magic and for creating thought forms, the methods range from simple as above, you know, the child just creating the idea and thinking about it, or to a lot more complicated. And in this video, I'm not going to get into any real specifics on that or how to make them, but I will touch on slightly the kinds of magic that a thought form is typically used for. For example, as we've already shown, you can create a thought form to assist you in something. You can create an imaginary friend who pops into your mind and before you to help you be more successful, confident, attractive, beautiful, smarter on a test, less lonely as a child in your bedroom, you know, whatever the case may be. Sort of, here's a thought form to help me do things. You can attract money or love. You can ask your thought form to help you succeed in business, in athletics, sports, etc. But a thought form, unlike a servitor, is not as likely to become a slave, and it is typically meant to do just one specific task, whereas the servitor might be sort of a general servant for you to take care of many of your different needs. A thought form typically has a narrower focus. Now, if you want to be successful and more attractive to the opposite sex, and you want to make money, you would not have one thought form doing all of those things. You would either create a different thought form for each of those tasks, or you would create some sort of servitor that encompasses those characteristics for you. But again, probably better in both cases to not mix and match different magical desires in one servitor or one thought form. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, the thing about thought forms is you can create multiple thought forms for the same goal if you want. So if you want to be relaxed and calm at an interview, you can create a thought form, the blue ball, and then you can create a thought form with the yellow ball, and you can create a thought form with blue lightning bolts or whatever you want, and all 3 or 4 of them can show up to the interview with you to help you be calm and confident at that event. And let's talk a little bit about the structure that a servitor or thought form lives in. A servitor typically is bound to a being of some type, an object. A thought form doesn't necessarily even have to have a visual, physical presence. It can just be the thought out there, if you want. Although most magicians typically create some sort of simple ball or energy shape that they can picture for their thought form. And some people do thought forms that are as complex as what people use for servitors, actual, like an imaginary friend, an imaginary animal, or something. But servitors typically are more solid mentally, visually, and have more characteristics. And then there's usually some place where the servitor goes when it's not being used. It maybe has like a genie's jar that it lives in, or some sort of object or place. Some magicians create areas in their body for the servitors to live. So the servitor maybe lives in the left pinky or whatever. And thought forms don't necessarily have to go to any specific spots, but some magicians do like to have their thought form, say, living, hovering in their, golden globy shape in the corner of a room, always looking over you or following you around, above you, over your head, always making you calm, or whatever your goal is for that thought form. But it kind of varies depending on which method you subscribe to. Let's talk a little bit about the thought form's final days. Just like with the servitor, you'd be wise as a magician to have a method to end the life of this thought form, to be able to terminate it. And the methods for ending the thought form's life will vary, again, depending on the methods used. In some cases, once you stop thinking about the thought form, it dissolves, dying a natural death. And I like this theory. I remember, I forget what movie it was. There was some movie I saw, and it was one of those movies about the afterlife or angels or something along those lines. And the message was, maybe it was Coco, I don't know. The message was that once no one on earth who was alive thought about that person who had passed, then their soul ceased to exist. But as long as somebody continued to remember them or think about them, then they remained alive as a soul. So, in a sense, that's kind of what some magicians think is happening with your thought form. Once you stop thinking about it, it no longer exists. But to be on the safe side, especially if you've created a very powerful thought form, it's not a bad idea to have some method for destroying it. Now, I think it was Chaos Magic, this book, where if you had created some sort of solid form for your thought form or servitor, when you're ready to get rid of it, you can rip it apart, soak it in water, burn it, different ways to destroy it. Some magicians are into that kind of destruction. They don't like the idea of creating something and then killing it, so they instead send it off to retirement in the astral realm, but ban it from ever having any effect on their lives anymore. I don't know. I think that's a little dangerous. I think kill it. But that's just me. What else? Oh yeah, now I want to tell you a little bit about my experience. Used the John Kreider method. Actually, not for me. It was who wanted healing. And this was a condition where nervously sort of self-harming and couldn't seem to stop. Its job was to hover around suffering from self-harm and change its mind so it wouldn't self-harm. And I created a sigil for this servitor. This was really actually a thought form, not a servitor. And I created the statement of intent. And I followed Kreider's technique of doing it in the dark, focusing on the thought, believing in the thought, and then when I had the thought firmly in my mind, drawing that energy and that thought into my hands and forming this energy ball in between my hands until I felt these thoughts of this, lack of harm being done anymore, the self-destruction for this friend of the recipient was now emboldened and strong, and then I let it go into the universe. But I didn't burn the sigil or the statement of intent. I kept it around for about a couple of weeks. And every night I would spend some time lighting a candle with the sigil and some of the words for this recipient carved into the candle. And then I would reestablish those thought forms and sort of recreate it in my mind as it burned. And I did this for like a week and a half. And I would check with my friend and it wasn't working. And I was getting a little concerned that maybe I was doing it wrong, or it's just one of those magic situations where it doesn't always work. But finally, on the last night, a few days ago, I decided it was time to burn the statement of intent with the sigil and call on one of my goddesses to aid me in making this sigil, this thought form, stronger and doing its job. So I burnt it in the cauldron, and I stopped lighting the candle for it, and I sort of forgot about it because I finished this daily sort of ritual of trying to strengthen this thought form, which wasn't what Kreider wanted, but I was just sort of mixing my own magic into it to try to make it work. And then lo and behold, yesterday or the day before, I forget which, a couple of days ago, I got word from my friend that this self-harming situation seems to have abated. So we'll see if it lasts for long, but I'm hopeful that this magic actually worked. And again, it's not a great example because I didn't get the results I wanted off the bat, but it could be that it's finally working. In this case, it's sort of contradictory of what I was just saying about how once you forget about a thought form, it ceases to exist. In this case, I needed to forget about the magic and let it go for it to start working, which is actually a theory of magic, that if you have a lust for results, you're less likely to see it work for you. So that pretty much sums it up. Let's see if there's anything else. I don't really understand the technique, but I'm curious about it. There are some magicians, Sorcerer Tall, for example. I just discovered his YouTube channel, and he uses yeast to create minions of a thought form, which sounds fascinating to me, but I need to understand that a little bit better before I give it a try. And I think that Magic is awesome. I would love to hear what your experiences are with magic, with thought forms or servitors or chaos magic or any kind of magic. Please comment below, like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.